welcome back everyone to the weekly Armchair Sports Talk podcast. This is the United Show. This is Devil's Advocate. This is actually our Saturday supplement podcast. I'm obviously your host, Keane. I will be joined in a couple of minutes by Pete Davey from Loaded Mag. Here today to preview Manchester United versus Newcastle United in the Premier League. And actually, funny enough, not a televised game. And this weekend, it's not live on Sky Sports or BT. So, yeah, kind of strange. One of the biggest games of the weekend, and it's not on telly. But look, it's one of them. We move, and I suppose, the only game of the season we're not on telly, so we kind of have to put up with that. But for everyone in the comments, guys, whoever's watching live here now or watching on the replay, do smash like the video, do hit that subscribe button. As always, we do appreciate your support. I suppose that before I bring Pete into the video, obviously, look, I'm just going to kind of recap on the Ammonia game. In the Ammonia game, I think, look, it was a 1-0 win. It wasn't vintage performance, if I say that. It wasn't, we weren't great in front of goal. But we did get the 3 points. Scott McTominay did score in the last minute of the game. So, from that perspective, I think, look, it's 3 points. You move on type of thing. And, look, ideally, we would want kind of a probably more goals scored in that game to kind of make a statement. But it was one of them where, look, our goalkeeper had an absolute blinder. It was, a great performance by their goalkeeper. He was a Man United fan. So, look, it was an anomaly in terms of another day we win that game 5 or 6-0. But in this case, it was a 1-0 win. And look, we move on to a big game at the weekend, which I'm actually going to bring my guest in here now. So I'm joined by Pete Davey from Loaded Mag Newcastle Podcast. So I'm going to bring Pete in here now. Morning, Pete. How's it going, pal?
Not too bad. How are you?
Very good, very good. I've enjoyed last night's show over on your podcast here. We talked a lot of things about Newcastle and United. So, yeah, look, happy to be here this morning. Look, we will be chatting all things United. We'll chatting all things Newcastle as well. And look, we'll kind of talk about, I suppose, the ownership situations as well. We're going to chat about both teams formed this season as well. But I suppose, look, first thing I'll ask you is, obviously last weekend you won 5-1 in the Premier League against Fulham. Actually, brilliant result for yourselves. Scored a lot of goals, and it's probably one of your best performances, of the season. What was your thoughts on your overall performance and kind of, I suppose, the floodgates open in front of goal?
Yeah, look, in terms, I'll start with the floodgates with regards to the goal. We've been saying this was coming for a while. We've been creating 15, 20, 25 chances per game. And in some games, particularly against the likes of Palace and Bournemouth at home, we haven't been getting the goals, or certainly enough goals to win the game. So we always knew it was coming. We just didn't know who it was coming up against. And, it came with Fulham. Obviously, they had a man sent off quite early on, but we were dominating before that point anyway. And we continued to do so, 70+ possession. And we managed to get 4 goals. And we thought, if we get that, we can continue on. And we did. And Brentford were coming in decent form, top half of the table. Ivan Toney getting his England call up and all the talk around him. But then on the back of that, we go and beat them 5-1. And again, it was a relatively comfortable game. We had the goal that was kind of ruled out from their point of view, rightly so, in my opinion. But then after that, we just turned it on. And they caused a few of their own mistakes, but we pressured them into doing that. Our press, our domination of the ball, Bruno Guimaraes, of course, was a huge factor in that. It was a brilliant win, the best performance of the season for me, because not necessarily in terms of the way in which we played football, but the dominance turning into goals. That was the key, and that was what was really impressive about that one. Really in general.
Yeah, it's a very good win, and to see kind of, I suppose what you said, dominance turn into goals. It's something that even. You've got Isak in there, you've had Callum Wilson obviously in there as well as strikers at the minute. But one thing that maybe Newcastle always have struggled on in the last couple of years is in front of goal, and obviously putting some of them chances away. But to see kind of them be ruthless in front of goal last weekend was not gonna lie, a bit scary, considering this game coming into the weekend. Obviously, if you're ruthless in front of goal against us, you might win. But it was a very good performance. And to be fair, there was Brentford lads on here slagging us off after the 4-0 win. They thought they won the league, and they've been slagging us off on Twitter, slagging us off on YouTube as well on their own podcast. So it was actually quite refreshing to see you guys slap them up. To be honest, I'm not going to lie.
We did see. I think I went onto the Brentford Twitter handle when they put their full-time tweet out. And I did see more than Newcastle fans. There was a lot more Man United fans in there. I'm very happy with that. So I think you've kind of built up a new little rivalry there with Brentford for sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a rivalry. They need to sit down, basically, like know their place. Like look, let the big boys do the big boy talk. But look, enough about Brentford anyway. Look, with very good performance, good 3 points. Look, you're alongside us now on the table. Like we're very close in the table, so we'll chat about kind of both of our seasons so far. I kind of want to talk about your club just a bit more before we dive into Man United talk. Obviously Eddie Howe's come in since last season, and like look, he's really stable the ship after Steve Bruce leaving Newcastle. And like when I talked to Martin on my podcast when Eddie Howe came in, I was saying to Martin he's going to be a good stopgap before you get a top manager. 12 months later, you look at Eddie Howe now and you look at like what he's done. I don't think he's a stopgap anymore. He looks like he's going to be there for the long term and really help you guys on your rebuild back.
Eddie Howe was never a stopgap. Never. Yeah. He wouldn't have took the job otherwise. He was very picky about who he wanted to manage next. He could have in the summer before he took our job. He could have gone to Celtic. And won many trophies there with them, but he was very particular on what type of project he wanted to take, and he was very keen to get the Newcastle job, and it was a long-term project, and it's been well documented since that in his interview with the new owners that he outlined not just the first couple of years, but where he sees Newcastle United in 3, 4, 5, 6 years. So he's looking long-term, and that was a big part of why we employed him as manager. Now, for those from a Newcastle perspective that have followed me and followed Loaded Mag NUFC, I banged the drum a year before we even signed Eddie Howe, when we had Steve Bruce and we're going for a nightmare run as the guy to take us forward. He was the next manager, and I've watched his career at Bournemouth and what he'd done, and been very impressed. The way he coaches his players, the way he manages situations tactically, a very attack-minded manager. That's exactly what we needed, and he's come in and done exactly that. I think he's exceeded expectations because of the way in which we played in the second half of the season. I don't think any Newcastle fan would have expected that, but he is a long-term manager. There's no doubt about it. And the fact that we've given him a brand new contract, and it still to this day hasn't specified how long that contract is for. It could well be a long-term contract. We're probably talking 2028, 2029, maybe it runs for. But he is the future. There's no doubt.
He's done a very good job, and I look at like not even like look. You can look at the signings or whatever. You can say they've been great signings, but I actually look at what he's done with some of the players who are already there. You know, such as Almiron, such as John Joe Shelby, such as Joe Linton. Like if I look at them 3 players just in general, they like when new owners came in, they like people are probably looking at them and saying they're a surplus to requirements, like with all the money you have, and to see how he's actually individually like improved them players, I think that's a testament to him. Like I look at Almiron at the minute, and I look at like how Eddie Howe improved Ryan Fraser at Bournemouth. When Ryan Fraser was at Bournemouth, he was like the second highest assist in one of the seasons Eddie Howe was there. Like Fraser had like the second highest assist in the league, and like you look at how Almiron is playing this season, it's kind of similar. Like he has Almiron flying at the minute. You consider like what Man City were doing at the end of last season when Jack Grealish and all them were slagging him off. And you look at how he's playing this season, he's playing unbelievable. He looks like a massive, massive threat. You look at Joe Linton, like he looked like, I looked at him and I was saying, like, why have Newcastle bought him? Because he's playing up front, he was playing off the left under Steve Bruce, and he looked, not gonna lie, he looked lost on the football pitch for many a game. Maybe. But you look at him since Eddie Howe's moving into the middle of the park, and like his energy, his desire, his commitment, he seems like a very good player now. And like I think that's a testament to the manager, and how he's individually improved them players, and not just improved them, but also probably given them the trust, and probably man managed them very well. Because look, Steve Bruce is a former United not former United manager, Jesus Christ, former United player, former United captain. Like, look, I will always respect him for what he done under Sir Alex. But you look at him as a manager, like, man management doesn't seem like his biggest strength. When you look at like some of his former players coming out and slating him, like there's no smoke without fire doing in that respect. So if I look the way Eddie Howe's coming, tactically he's improved Newcastle massively. Obviously, from an attacking sense, he's improved Newcastle. But I look at him from a man management perspective. He looks like he's really gone in there and really, got great sense of togetherness in your dressing room.
Yeah, definitely. That's what he did straight away, is bring a togetherness in there. One of the first acts that I can remember going back in, apart from the fact that he actually got our players to train, it was well documented towards the end of Steve Bruce's time that I think in the space of like 11 days, the players were given like 7 days off, without training. Like that's just not professional, and that was the kind of situation that Steve Bruce was putting our players under, which is why we had so many injuries, because they weren't training. So Eddie Howe came in and had those 2 weeks in the international break where we just literally blitzed the players, and the high intensity training. And you could see it in our first performance against Brentford. We looked fitter, we looked better. But the one thing he did straight away is that he took Joe Linton under his wing, and really took him aside and had a word with him. He was still playing in attacking areas. He was playing on the left hand side the first game, left side of attacking midfield. Attacking front three. And played really well. He scored against Brentford in the first game, but and then he transitioned him by chance. It was in the Norwich game where Clark got sent off after about 10 minutes, and so we had to rejig the side. Joe Linton ended up playing centre midfield and had a blinder and kept him in that position, but he'd already won him over by that point by the man management. An arm round, looking at his data, looking at how he could improve as a player. Did the same with Fabian Shaw, did the same with John Joe Shelby, did the same with Miguel Almiron over time, built and worked with him and improved him, and we're seeing the fruits of that this season. But, those 4 or 5 players or players that you just mentioned that we were adamant that were going to be out the door. When we first took over, I was convinced that Joe Linton was going to be hauled out on loan in January just to get him off the books. But that's massive credit to Eddie Howe. There's not many managers that could come in and make that much of a significant change. Shaw plays every week. Joe Linton is undroppable at times, although Willock's playing really well at the moment. It is a question whether he's going to come back in after his injury, but he's been undroppable. You've got John Joe Shelby that would regularly play if he was fit. He's close to fitness now, probably in the next week or two. Miguel Almiron's played pretty much every game, had an unbelievable pre-season. Those players are doing the bits right now. And I just don't see many managers that would have got that type of output from those players.
Yeah, and I think, again, it's a testament to how he's attention to detail and how he manages players. And again, it's like, I think there's no surprise when, like, even when he was at Bournemouth, he was shortlisted for Everton, he was shortlisted for Arsenal, shortlisted for Spurs as well, like, in terms of when their managers would eventually leave, that he was actually on their recruitment lists at the time. So, like, Newcastle have done very well getting him in. I think, look, if you look at that stint at Bournemouth where they did get relegated, I think, like, look, a lot of that's down to the club, not actually Eddie Howe, because you look at their recruitment strategy that season, like buying, let's be honest, bums from Liverpool. Liverpool pulled Bournemouth's pants down, like massively. So, like, look, I'm not surprised that did happen that season. But if you look at what he's done the last kind of year or so at Newcastle, he's massively improved a lot of players. But also, if you look at the recruitment, like, for the money Newcastle have, they could splash out literally on anybody, like literally anybody. But what they've done is it's very strategic. Like, if you look at players like Kieran Trippier coming in, you look at players, Isaac, Guimaraes, Botman, Dan Burn. He's brought in players to, number one, steady the ship. Number two, he's brought in good characters. And then number three, he's bringing players in just to suit a specific style of play, and slowly build. Like, he's walking before Newcastle can run. Do you know what I mean? Like, in the sense of, he's not doing what Everton did or Portsmouth did when they got the load of money that they went down and splashed on big names and hoping, that the shit would stick and essentially, go up the table. What Newcastle have done has been very good because they've got Ashworth in from Brighton, and obviously they've that recruitment strategy there. They've got football and people behind the scenes who are, look, I'm kind of jealous because I look at the way our club was run behind the scenes. It's scandalous, to be honest. But I look at kind of how Newcastle are doing. They're slowly building. They're doing it the right way. Now, people can talk about ownership and all that crack. To be fair, I'm not interested in that because, look, at the end of the day, in this in this league, you're going to have to spend money to succeed. It's simple as that. You're going to have to spend money. And I talked about this before because people bang United fans with the drum of you spend money. We spend money, but we spend money stupidly. Do you know why we spend it stupidly? Because we've no one behind the scenes to run on the football side. It's investment bankers buying players to sell shirts. So like when you look at how Newcastle are doing it, they're doing it or like in a way that's getting them up the table, stabilizing them as a Premier League side first. Because under Steve Bruce, there was a lot of worry that Newcastle would have went down last season if he stayed and the new ownership didn't come in. Like I remember talking to you guys before the game last season. Ronaldo's return when we were chatting about Newcastle, we were chatting about potential ownership takeovers. I know there was rumours at the time, and obviously the injunction and all that crack was there at the time. But there was worry that Newcastle might go down, especially with like Bruce and Mike Ashley still there. So I think what they've done is they've steadied the ship, and what they've done is they've brought in players who will help do that and also get them up to the top half of the table. Because I think if I look at Newcastle at the moment, and I know we're going to chat about Europe maybe potentially this season, but I think even if Newcastle didn't finish in a European place this season and they finish in the top half, that would help like legitimize the takeover, and it would help legitimize their space as a top half team again. And I think then the season after, probably you'd see even more progress in terms of your recruitment.
Yeah, you've made lots and lots of really good points there. First and foremost, the new owners have probably, the ship was steadied probably by February, March. I think at this point now, the ship is firmly moving forward. That's how much of a progress we've made in just over a year's time. We've made so much progress with that. But you're right. The recruitment with regards to Newcastle United has been absolutely spot on. And you look at the players. You've just named some of the players. I mean, the one thing I'll say is that obviously with us not having the likes of Darren Eales and Dan Ashworth in place in January, Eddie Howe took more of a hands-on approach with the recruitment. And kind of handpick the players. And he almost did that to a certain extent in the summer as well. The one thing I really like about Eddie Howe is that he does his homework on the players that he wants. So it's not just what's available in January, we'll just get that player and that player and that player, because we were offered everybody pretty much. We could have added lots of other players, more high-profile players, Philip Coutinho being one of them. But Eddie Howe wanted players with the right attitude. You can look at Philip Coutinho as an example now. He can barely get game for Villa because he looks like he don't want it. That's not the type of player Eddie Howe wants. So he does his research. But then you look at, and one thing we haven't touched on is the way in which we've gone about spending the money. Okay, yes, we spent 200 million, but it's the way in which we've gone about it. We've got one of the Premier League's best right backs, and we brought him in from Atletico Madrid. He just won La Liga, and we paid 12 million for him. Yeah. Anyone else in the Premier League would want him. I'm sure Man United would want him.
We were linked with him last summer. The last summer we were linked to Kieran Trippier, and Atletico Madrid, I think they quoted us 25-30 million at the time. But we put the money towards Varane at the time. Because we needed to keep the money for Varane. But I wanted him. Like, people go back 12 months ago, more than 12 months ago, this previous summer, and Trippier was one of the top players on my list in terms of right backs, because obviously right back is a problem position for us.
And that's it. It's a no-brainer if you had the choice between Dalot and Trippier. It's a no-brainer. You go then on in January and we sign Dan Burn for 13 million, and nobody else in the Premier League would have ever looked at Dan Burn. They would have never looked at him as a viable option, but we did. He's a Geordie lad anyway, which made sense. We brought him in, and he was absolute colossal at the back. Him and Fabian Shaw built up a great partnership. And then we go and we were, we could have, we got Matty Target on loan. We could have and we actually bid 25 million to get Luca Dean, who ended up going to Aston Villa. So we could have spent 25 million. We didn't. We said, okay, you've got Luca Dean. We'll take your current left back, Matty Targett, on loan to us. It was an absolute revelation. We then, in the summer, was then looking at Lodi, who's ended up going on loan to Nottingham Forest from Atletico Madrid, was quoted 25 million. We said, you know what, we'll take Matty Targett on a permanent. We spent 13 million on him. So we've just revamped our complete backline, for what? 30 odd million with Shaw there. We've then gone one further. We've got one of the best European young centre-backs in Europe in Sven Botman for 30 million. Like, he's already probably worth, at least another 50% more than that with the way he's played this season. We've then got Nick Pope that we signed for 10 million. Initial payment of 4 million, I think. It's just crazy.
Yeah, that's very shrewd. Like, Nick Pope was one of the best keepers in the league as well. Like, so to get for that much is mad. Like,
it's the way in which we've gone about the business, and people will argue Chris Wood, 25 million. We had to buy him out of his contract. We would have never paid that much if he didn't have that release clause. But we needed a striker at that point, and needs must we needed to get him because Wilson was out. Bruno Guimaraes at just under 40 million. He's worth at least double that now with the performances that he's put in. The only one that you maybe question is Alexander Isak at around 60 million. But for me, it's a massive investment. The lad's 22 years old. He's got so much room to grow, and he's already playing regular European football and scoring goals. So for me, that's not a risk. So it's all been very much calculated in terms of how we're spending our money. So, Eddie Howe is shown through those mistakes at Bournemouth with the likes of Ibe and Solanke and some of those real bad deals that he's pulled out there, that he can be shrewd and he can get the right players. But with Dan Ashworth now behind him and looking at him and looking at players alongside him, I'm even more confident that we're gonna sign top players. We've signed Garan Crewell, the young 18-year-old wonder kid from Australia, just had his first international cap at 18, looking like he could go to the World Cup. We've just agreed a deal. He's coming in January. There's another 18-year-old Brazilian, Andre Santos, that's looking like that deal could be wrapped up. Fantastic young centre midfielder who looks like he's got the world at his feet, coming in. So we're signing the right players, for the future as well as for now. It's just great to see.
Yeah, and look, again, there's a strategy there, and you can see, like, you're not just signing big name players. Obviously, Isak had a massive reputation. I really like him. He's a really good striker. We came up against him in the Europa League. Like, he was decent against us. Very good player, and again, he has a lot of upside. He's still young. He's a very good finisher as well. He's very good in front of goals. So you're a very good striker there. But also, like, look, you've young players coming in there as well, which, look, if they don't make an impact immediately, you still can bring them through the academy. You can bring them into the under 18s, under 21s, and you can help them acclimatise to life in England as well. So, like, look, that's like there's a strategy there, and look, it's obviously from your side, from a Newcastle perspective, I'd say you're delighted with the way things are going so far, and especially just not only just under new manager but under new ownership as well. But we will move gears on to Man United. Obviously, like, look, we were talking last night in terms of our start to the season. Obviously, the first two games are a bit of a, like we said, a disaster. But what have you made of Erik ten Hag so far at Man United and his overall start?
I think it's been a difficult start for him. I would say a lot of that is not his fault. I think a lot of that is down to what's going on behind him and things that he can't necessarily affect. So he's come into a club that has the fans against them because they want the owners out, and rightly so. The owners, although they've pumped in a lot of money, and I said on the show last night, they almost remind me a little bit of Mike Ashley in terms of, they don't want to see the club progress in the way that the fans want to see the club progress. They'll put money in, which is great. Mike Ashley didn't put any money in for us. He actually made more money than in his time at Newcastle than actually put into the club himself. but at least you've had money pumped in.
I think with that is that the Glazers actually don't put anything in. That's where the massive misconception is. Like they anything that we spend is from our earnings.
Okay.
They take 1.5 billion out of the club.
In that case, then it's very similar to Mike Ashley, because Mike Ashley would only ever sanction deals for signings based on our own income. So that's the case, and they've not actually pumped in, and it's based on your income, and your income is probably one of the best in the Premier League. Then they are very, very similar. So I understand that the fans have got that frustration, and with that, Ten Hag's walking into that situation going, whoa, what's going on? He's then, in my opinion, he's then come into a squad that is not good enough to challenge for Champions League football. There is a squad that have got a mix of players from various different managers, a mix of players that either want to be there or don't want to be there. It was very clear that the Cristiano Ronaldo situation was that he wanted to leave. And I don't think it's been handled the best at times. I think more recently he's handled the situation better and done the right thing. But I think certainly over the summer it wasn't handled great. On top of that, like I said, you've got players there that are a bit all over the place, that are on high wages, high responsibilities within the club, but actually probably don't give you too much. An example of that for me is Harry Maguire. Harry Maguire, we talked about last night. For me, he's not who you want in your centre-back pairing if you're going to go forward and challenge for Champions League football. That's just my opinion on that. Diego Dalot, a decent right-back, can do well at the likes of AC Milan and one or two other clubs, but he's not a right-back that's going to take you forward. Wan-Bissaka, all big fees that were paid for these players that are probably not the kind of players that will take you forward. I'd even question Luke Shaw, if I'm honest. I know a lot of Man United fans like Luke Shaw, but for me, I don't see him as the guy you need to go forward. Malacia, who you signed, I really like him. I think he's a good player. I think he's the future. And another one that might be controversial, in my opinion, David De Gea. I think he needs to move on. I think, that old guard of players, David De Gea, he can have a wonder game. We can have a wondrous form of 3 or 4 games and then have an absolute nightmare and concede really sloppy goals. For me, that's not what you want. I think there's a number of players where you just need to start again. I think you did part of that in the summer that was really good. Pogba going, Lingard going, Matic going, players like that, Juan Mata, those players who, yes, they've served the club well for a number of years. You needed to get them out to start again, start fresh. But I think more need to happen. And I think Erik Ten Hag knows this, and it's going to be a process. We don't like talking about the other team in red over at Merseyside, but they had a similar situation with Jurgen Klopp, where he came in and had a really difficult start because there are players there that they just didn't want or need, and he wanted gone. I think you're in a similar position right now with Erik Ten Hag. You're having to get through this moment where you still want to be feeling like you should be challenging, but you've got players there that either he doesn't want or are just not good enough. And it's going to take, a couple of windows to wean out those players and get rid of them for him to bring in his own players. You've started Malacia for one, coming in, brilliant. You've got, in my opinion, you kind of fell into this deal, but it was the best deal you could have ever done in getting the likes of Casemiro. Casemiro is exactly what Man United needed and have needed for like 3 or 4 years. You wanted Frankie de Jong, who is a terrific, talented player, but not really, in my opinion, what you needed. Eriksen, we wanted him. We were in for him. We went all in. Eddie Howe really wanted him in the summer, but he's chose you guys. Brilliant signing on a free. Perfect for your system. And then, you've got the likes of Sancho and Anthony, who are, with regular football, will become very, very good players. So you're starting to build something there, and we're starting to see a different Man United there. And it goes back to my point. Ideally, I think you probably should have got rid of Ronaldo in the summer and let him move on, to get rid of all the circus that comes with it, because it does have an effect. It has an effect on fans, it has an effect on players. Get rid of that circus, move it on like you did with Pogba. But you've kept him. But I love the way he's dealt with it. is that, okay, we're keeping you, but you're going to have to earn your way into the team. You're going to have to play the way that I want to play. And the way you're set up now without Ronaldo in the team, I think is your best way of being successful this season.
Definitely. Like, just a couple of points you touched on. I think, like, I agree on De Gea. I think if you look at the way Ten Hag wants to play, he wants to play out from the back. He wants a keeper who sweeps. He wants a keeper who comes for crosses. Like David De Gea, for me, I said this last season, I think he should have left last year. I think, like, you look at the modern day goalkeeper now, you can't, like, look, he's a tremendous shot stopper, but if you look at every other facet of goalkeeping, I think there's much more, that he needs to do. And, like, look, he's 30 odd years of age. He's not necessarily old. Like, he's not old, like, but in the footballing sense, at 30 something, 30, 31 years of age, whatever he is, can he adapt this game at that age? I'm not sure he can, when he's never shown them characteristics in his game, over over a decade, with the club, in that regard. You mentioned, obviously, his recruitment. I think it's been very good. If I look at every single player he signed, Anthony, Martinez, Malacia, Ericsson, Casemiro. Now, Casemiro's taken a little bit to settle in, but in the last couple of games, you've seen what he gives us in terms of that defensive-minded midfield player. Like, he's been a very good sign. I think all of Ten Hag's signings so far have been hits at the minute. So, like, you can see his recruitment strategy is there. But you're right, there's players like Dalot. He's playing well this season, but I still have question marks over him long term. Luke Shaw's one of my favorite players as well. Like, it's mad because I saw you talking to Shane on the podcast, like, about this recently. And one thing we did say is, when competition comes in for Luke Shaw, whether it was Brandon Williams a couple of years ago or whether it was Alex Telles a couple of years ago, and now Malacia this season, he wakes up and he plays well. But, like, I think for Man United going forward, what we need players who don't rest in their laurels. We need top players who give you consistent 7, 8 out of 10s every week. We can't have players in there who, look, let's be honest, they need to kick up the arse before they play. Do you know what I mean? We can't have players like that anymore. We need players pushing each other, but we also need players who have that right mentality. Yeah. I think Luke Shaw, like, look, as much as I love him and he's one of my favorite players, like, I think mentality-wise, going forward, he's probably not what we need in the squad. I think the way Ten Hag's dealt with the Ronaldo situation has been quite good. He's always been complimentary about him in the media. And he's like, from day one, literally even before, like, that Ronaldo said he wants to leave the club, Ten Hag said, Ronaldo's part of my plans. Ronaldo has a place in his squad. Now, he never specified what that place was, but he said, Cristiano Ronaldo has a place in my squad. He brings a lot of goals to our team. And the way he's dealt with the situation, he's dealt with it very well. I think Ronaldo as well, you think you have to tip your cap off to Cristiano because, like I said this last night, he's Cristiano Ronaldo. He's the greatest of all time. Like, he's not used to being on the bench. Let's be honest. He's not used to that. But at 37, nearly 38 years of age, he's taken a new role in this squad. Like, he's not, like, he is still one of the talisman of the squad, but he's taken on a leadership role now. He's taken on a role where, he's guiding some of our younger players within the team. Like, if you look at, like, I don't know if you follow United extensively, but if you look at how he's guiding young players such as, like, Alejandro Garnacho, within the squad, like, young attackers in the team, like, he's giving them advice, he's taking them under his wing. He's fulfilling that part of the squad as well. And when he's come into the team this season, he's done relatively okay, Ronaldo. Now, you can talk about the Brentford game, but look, every player was shit that day. If I be brutally honest, every player, apart from McTominay when he came on, actually, and Malacia when they came on, every other player was absolute dog shit that day. But if you look at the rest of the squad and the rest of the United team right now, like, Ronaldo's come in, he's been professional about it. Like, since the window's closed, he's put his head down. He knows there's a World Cup coming up. He knows now, look, I haven't got my move. I have to get on with it. I have to play for the shirt. And he is doing that. And, like, look, I like, there's been talk of him leaving after the World Cup. I simply don't see it because, like, if I look at Anthony Martial's injury problems, and I look at, like, Rashford probably being better suited than playing on the left-hand side. Like, I see Cristiano playing a lot of football this season. And, like, I think, look, overall, if you look at our forwards right now and you look at United strikers, Martial is probably our best fit to play up front in a Ten Hag system in terms of bringing players into play, his relationship with Rashford, his pressing, like he's probably the best fit. But Cristiano has shown in recent weeks that he can adapt his system, and he's someone who I believe can be a useful figure in this rebuild. Now, I'm not talking long term. I'm talking this season in terms of, look, helping us get goals when it matters, helping us, bet in some of these younger players and be kind of an example within the dressing room to some of these younger players, your Sanchos, your Antonys, your Rashfords, players like that, Garnacho, Alangad, players like that, who haven't done it yet. Ronaldo, the way he trains, how he carries himself, off the pitch, the extra things he does, his nutrition, all that type of thing. Like, he can be an example within the dressing room for that right now. And I think, look, at the end of the day, he's probably come to a bit of self-realization as well himself in the last couple of months, where he's kind of realized, look, I'm not the same player I was, a couple of years ago. And maybe this is my level right now, at this moment in time. I think maybe, look, if you consider everything that's happened with Ronaldo in the last 12 months, he's obviously come back to the team that made him, the club that made him what he is today. And obviously, look, before he went we done the most of his development on a Sir Alex in 6 years, and Rennie Mullenstein really developed him as a player. And then he went on to Madrid and hit astronomical heights. But in that time, he's come back to United. He's unfortunately lost a child, all that type of stuff. Yeah. If you talk the last 12 months, Pete, Ronaldo's gone through an awful lot as a person. Never mind the football inside, because the season last season was a fucking disaster. But if you look at Ronaldo in general over the last 12 months, as a human being, has gone through a lot. I think it's a testament to his mentality that he's still ready to go again and wants to try win trophies for United this season and also adapt his own game as well.
Yeah, I think that's been the biggest thing. Obviously, the personal stuff is going to hit anybody. It's always a difficult moment to go through something like that. Went through something similar when he was a little bit younger, with his dad passing whilst at Man United the first time around, and he struggled through that moment as well. And what he suffered last season, it was kind of like a double, triple whammy, because Man United, like you said, was going through a really difficult time. This then happens. He's then, there's question marks about his future and whether, Man United are going to get Champions League football. They didn't. He wanted to leave. But I think the biggest thing for him that he's had to wrestle with, certainly this summer, is the fact that he didn't have the array of offers that he was maybe expecting. And I think that's probably where he's had to go away and reflect. Okay, he wanted the likes of Bayern Munich and potentially PSG, but
Chelsea even as well, yeah.
They all went in different directions. And he's not used to that. He's used to everyone wanting him. And he's going for a moment now where, he's not starting. So he doesn't feel wanted from that perspective. He didn't feel wanted in the summer with with clubs being after him. So he's in a difficult moment, and it's hard sometimes to make that transition. Most players make that transition when they turn 30, 31, and they have to make that transition because the clubs start looking in different directions. He's been able to prolong that for another 5-6 years because of how good he's been. But this is something he's going to have to make a real sort of big decision on in the summer, because obviously his contract runs out. Is he going to need to move on? He probably is, because Ten Hag's going to look in a different direction. But then it's, who does he move on to? Where's his next step? He's always mentioned about Sporting Lisbon. Does he go back there? But are they guaranteed Champions League football? Is he going to go to a league that's not considered the top 5 league in Europe? He's got these things that he's going to sort of be wrestling with, and he's thinking in his mind. He's got obviously the World Cup, his last World Cup that he'll probably be playing, and he's
talking about wanting to play the next Euros now as well. So
yeah, I think it all depends for me who he goes to, how well he plays, how he feels about things. I think it will all depend on those things about whether he plays or not. And if he does, there'll be a place, because Portugal have been really good in always finding a place for him in their team, regardless of what quality players have come about. I think like I said, going back to the point, Ten Hag has handled that situation since the season started really well, because I think the way that Ronaldo plays, is not the same Ronaldo as what we saw at Madrid or certainly when he was at Man United the first time. And you have to play to him. He has to be the focal point. If you want to get the best out of Cristiano Ronaldo, you have to play for him. I actually think players like last season, like Marcus Rashford, suffered with having Cristiano Ronaldo in the team, because Rashford was playing so well, having the team play for him and the way that he wanted to play. He's now taken a backseat because Ronaldo gets the priority. So he's had to change the way he plays. And actually, in recent weeks, they've found a way of playing together, and their little interchanges from left to central work quite nicely and work quite well. Now, you saw it obviously with the goal at Everton, the winning goal from Ronaldo, and the way they're linking up is a lot better. And I think there's more of an understanding now there with them. But look, it's always a difficult situation with that. But I think that Cristiano Ronaldo, he deserves the respect because of how he's handled it. He could have kicked off. He could have caused the fuss. He hasn't. He sat on the bench. He's got ready. He's played. You probably couldn't say that last season. He did have a bit of a huff about him. And, there was times where if he wasn't picked to start, he wasn't in the squad.
Yeah, Rangnick, like, I'll be honest, everyone who listens to this podcast know how I feel about Ralph Rangnick and how he dealt with a lot of things as manager at the football club. Now, where fans lapped it up when he called out the Glazers, which is great. Like, look, by the way, fair play to him for that, for calling out the owners. But if you look at him as a manager in the squad, he dealt with that squad horrendously, absolutely horrendously. There's no surprise, Pete, that the players didn't run for him. And how come the players are running for Ten Hag now? Do you know what I mean? Like, and this is the same group of players, bar the exception of like 3 or 4, 5. Like, so like I look at like that situation, and Rangnick never like dealt with a player with a personality like Ronaldo. He never dealt with a player as big as Ronaldo. I think he handled that very poorly last season. But yeah, like, look, I think all collectively, like Ten Hag and Ronaldo, they've dealt with the situation quite well. And look, hopefully, he can stay at the club, I think, just for the season. Look, whether Ten Hag decides to move him on next summer, or Ronaldo decides time to move on. Look, I'm happy either way, because I'm looking at some of the players we're looking at for that striker position next summer, and providing we get Champions League or not, next season, that I think a lot rides on a couple of players we're looking at recruiting. But at the end of the day, I trust Ten Hag. I look at some of the signings he's made now. He's been very shrewd. He's been very authoritative, and like a massive thing for me about Erik Ten Hag is after that Brentford defeat, they ran 13k or 10.5k, something like that, more than us during the game. And on the Sunday in training, rather than Ten Hag run the balls off him and just blame the players, Ten Hag ran it with him. I think that was a massive thing to kind of get the squad together and show accountability, because like, I think previous managers we've had post Sir Alex, bar Solskjaer, then none of them took accountability for the failures. It was all the players. Granted, the players were a lot of the blame for some of the results we've had down the years, but managerial decisions have also been that, and not one manager took accountability. So to see like Ten Hag take that accountability then, and you actually look at the upturn in results and the upturn in United's running stats, work rate, pressing, all that type of stuff, like it can't be a shock that the players have bought into what Ten Hag, like his ideology and his ideas, because of that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's clear to see. You can see the improvement in, like I say, in recent weeks. It's not perfect, but you can see it's going in the right direction. What I think you need now is a little bit like what we've done with Eddie Howe, is that we've gone, right, okay, you're our guy, we're going to back you. And even if form dips, it doesn't matter. We're going to back you. And I think the key to that is the fans. If the fans get behind the manager, regardless if you have a little slump or you have a difficult moment in the season, get behind the manager. Show your support to him. Give him the opportunity to have another 3-4 windows and be able to really revamp this squad, and then give him another couple of years after that once he's revamped the squad, with that squad to take you forward, because that's what you need now. You need a manager in place for 6-7 years. And it's not easy. It's not easy in modern football, because if you don't get success in 2 or 3 years, you're out. I think Eric Ten Hag is the guy to take you guys forward. He's already proven his credentials in Holland, and I think he could do something similar. You know, he could have quite easily kept and played week in, week out Donny van der Beek because of what he did at Ajax, and he's not. He's been really ruthless. He's playing players that can take this club forward, and I think if you stick with him, he's the guy that can bring success back to Man United for sure.
Definitely, I think he's the right manager to bring continued stability and continued success to the football club. 110%, I think he's that guy. But again, I think with the ownership situation at the football club, I think it's a hard situation, I think, for him to be in a position where United are challenging for title consistently. Because if I look at every other manager previous to him, post Sir Alex Ferguson, none of them were given that platform after having a good season. You look at Van Gaal, finished in the top 4, wasn't given all of his targets, sacked. David Moyes came in, he was given Fellaini on deadline day, wasn't backed. You can talk about Juan Mata in January. They only signed then because he was convenient at the time, because Jose and Mourinho didn't want him. Yeah. You look at Mourinho, won the Europa League, got some targets, finished second behind Man City Centurions. What did they give him after he finished second behind that team? They gave him Lee, Grant, Dallo, and Fred. Look, honestly, what did the owners give him? Then Solskjaer, they came in, they didn't give him Haaland, they didn't give him Bellingham, they gave him Cavani and Donny van der Beek. Do you know what I mean? If you look at the comparisons, it's absolutely mind-boggling. There's so many players. No, Jack Grealish wasn't brought in. They brought in Bruno early because they weren't going to finish in the top 4. It's that's just post Sir Alex. That's just post Sir Alex. If you look even before that, there's a lot of times Fergie wasn't given the players he wanted, but because he was just such a good manager and he had a wealth of experience within the squad, like Scholesy, Giggsy, the Nevilles, Carrick, Rooney, players like that, they dragged us over the line. These owners have taken 1.5 billion out of the football club. These owners have neglected the stadium. Like Old Trafford has fallen apart. But the training ground, which was once the best in the country, is well behind a lot of clubs. Our women's team is being neglected at the minute. There's a lot of facets to this football club that are being neglected. But because the Glazers spend the odd few million not even the Glazers, because the Glazers leave the club, spend the money they generate, there's a misconception then that the Glazers are good owners. You see people like Graham Souness, Redknapp, whatever fucking Egypt's on TalkSport, whoever's on there, Simon Jordan, people like that, you'll talk about the Glazers as they're good owners. But the facts don't lie. The facts don't lie. And at the end of the day, you look at these owners, the fact that there's the 1958 are doing a lot of great work with the protests. There's a lot of protests every week, and people say it's because you're losing. If you want to go back in history, there's a lot of protests against the Glazers when we got into the 3 Champions League finals in 4 years.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? When we were winning titles, the
green and yellow scarves for one. The green and yellow scarves were brought out quite early on, weren't they?
Yeah, in 2010. When we marginally didn't win the league that season, but we were challenging for trophies. We were challenging for Champions League. We were winning titles when all these protests were happening. In 2005, the protests were happening. So that's where I look at the misconceptions. And again, a lot of people will just have that agenda against United just because we're Manchester United. It's going to happen. Look, that comes with the territory. But I just look at certain aspects of our football club that could be run so much better if we just had owners who, not even cared, but just let the football side operate and get football people in there, and it would be so much better. But again, I think that can only happen when they leave, because then dividends, all that type of stuff isn't taken out of the club, and money is actually put in to improve the infrastructure around the club, not just transfers. People you see people on Twitter talk about transfers the whole time. More things need to be done. Football people need to be put in. There needs to be a strategy for the academy, the women's team. All these different type of things need to be done. But again, it's a case of if and when that happens. But we will move on to the game because look, if I talk about the Glazers, I'll be here on the full fucking 24-hour live stream on grievances I have with them bastards. But look, we talk about tomorrow's game just in just a bit more detail. Obviously, look, both teams are in form, like with the exception of kind of Arsenal and Manchester City. We're probably like one of the most informed teams in the league, both of us. Give us your starting 11 prediction from Newcastle tomorrow. How do you expect yourselves to set up tomorrow?
Okay, so from the back, I don't think too much will change. So Pope will start in goal. We'll have Trippier right back, Shaw and Botman in the centre. And then it's what we do with the left back situation. So Burns played the last couple of games and played well. But thinking of that potential of the pace of Anthony or whoever plays on that right hand side for you. Dan Burns, strength-wise, positional-wise, is very good, but it's that pacing and behind that might be a concern. So we might then bring Target back in for this game. He handled Mohamed Salah very well at Anfield earlier on a number of weeks ago when playing in that position. So that might be the only change from the back line. I originally went with Dan Burn when we talked about it last night, but I think that there could be an argument either way for either one of those playing. So possibly a change there. Midfield three, again, it's hard to change that midfield three. So Longstaff was kind of the sitter with Bruno and Willett, the ones in the number 8s kind of pushing forward, pressing high, trying to get into the box and cause problems. But then you're leaving out Joe Linton, who, against Man United at St James's Park was excellent. Dominated that midfield. We could do with that in there again, but the three midfielder played so well. It's like, what do you do? Who do you drop? Because whoever you drop it would be really harsh to do so. If you're going to drop anyone, it might be Sean Longstaff. You drop Bruno back into that number 6 role, and you have Joe Linton and Willett being the ones to press and push forward. So again, there's an argument for maybe one change in that midfield line, and then you've got your front line. Callum Wilson starts. Isak's not quite ready, although he's been training. We don't believe he's going to be in the squad. And then you've got Miguel Almiron, who's firing on that right-hand side of our midfield, of our attacking three. He'll start for sure, and then it's what you do on the left. So Murphy scored in the last game playing on the left. He's lightning quick, commits defenders when he's got the ball at his feet, but in the attacking moments in the final third, he might not play the right cross or the right pass or have the right shot on him. He scored last week, his first goal in like 18 months, I think, and he's been playing well the last couple of games. So again, it's another question. Do you play Joe Linton on that left-hand side? Potentially. You could. He can play there. There was an argument about Anderson Maximin coming in because he's been fit, but there's some talk this morning that he pulled up in training and he might not be playing or part of the squad.
I'm on the bench of my fantasy football this weekend, just in case.
Yeah. There's talk this morning, whether it's true or not, we don't know. But there's talk that he pulled up in training yesterday, so he might not be travelling with the squad. We don't know. It could be rumours to throw players in opposition. But normally when this sort of noise comes out early, it tends to be true. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But I didn't expect ASM to start even if he was fit. I expected him to be on the bench. So that's kind of how I see the team really. Maybe 2 or 3 positions are up for debate, but the vast majority are quite set. And the vast majority would have been part of those winning games, the last 2 games.
Yeah, and look, there's one thing about that, you always have to play a team that's in form and on merit. And I think if you look at United's team, United's situation, we're kind of doing something similar to yourselves. We're playing players on merit, not reputation. I think look, if there's other players other than St. Maximum that are in form, then does he start, does he not? But there is that situation is if he pulled up in training, he mightn't play. Yeah. Personally, I hope he doesn't play on that left-hand side against Dalot. I think he can absolutely cook him on that right-hand side. And that could be a massive concern. The way he dribbles past players, the way his trickery. Dalot could either dribble past them and play well, or alternatively, he could Dalot could give away a penalty. I could see it happening. and I'll probably get clipped up for this now if it does happen, if St. Maximum does play. But I'm going to go with my team just for tomorrow's game. I'm going to go David De Gea in goal. I think that speaks for itself. At the minute, Dubravka hasn't got a chance to come into the team and show what he can do yet. I think at the minute, Ten Hag does trust David De Gea, so we'll go with him. Again, Dalot, just by process elimination, we don't have another right back at the minute, and he's actually doing relatively okay. So, I would start him right back. Varane did come on at Goodison Park last week. He didn't play against Ammonia on Thursday, which suggests to me he will be starting tomorrow. So I go Varane and Martinez as centre back. It's been our best centre back pairing this season. In the big games, they've played really, really well. I know you can talk about he had, but Varane got injured, so it was one of them where he didn't get to play the full game. But Erling Haaland is Erling Haaland. He's absolutely destroying everyone at this point. But in every other game this season against likes of Liverpool, Arsenal, Everton, I said Varane only came on the Everton game, but all the other games, Leicester, Southampton away, he's played really, really well alongside Martinez. And Martinez almost feels like another midfielder when he's on the pitch, the way he breaks the lines with his passing and his aggressiveness and the way he steps out is really good. So play him there. I go Luke Shaw left back. I know I talked about him long term, but in the last couple of games, he's really stepped up. He's played really well. He was outstanding against Everton, probably our best player on the pitch at Goodison last weekend. So I go Luke Shaw left back. Scott McTominay is out this week, so due to suspension. So I originally was going with a McTominay and Casemiro pairing in midfield to deal with Newcastle physically. But obviously that's had to change, and there's no way I'm starting Fred. He's crap. So I'll go with Casemiro in midfield, sitting between two centre halves as a 6, Eriksen as the 8, and Fernandes in the 10. Look, Donny van de Beek isn't fit, and even at that, I said on your podcast last night, I don't think he's good enough to be a Man United player, never mind a Premier League player. Mm-hmm. So, he doesn't come into the equation for me. Anthony on the right, again, if Dan Burn is starting left back for Newcastle, I think that's an area we can maybe get at Newcastle with Anthony dribbling at him potentially and creating chances. On the left, Rashford, again, him and Trippier, that could be a very good battle. In that regard, so I'll go Rashford on the left. And if he's 100% fit, then I go Anthony Martial up top. Obviously, if Martial isn't fit, then Ronaldo plays. But for me, if you're talking about pulling the Shar and Botman out of position and really disrupting Newcastle, Martial and Rashford's interchange and movement could really be key in terms of breaking Newcastle down, but also giving us that extra outlet in attack. And Martial brings out the best in Rashford and Bruno Fernandes. He really does. So hopefully Martial can play from the start tomorrow, but if not, hopefully we can see him in the second half. If either we're winning or do we need a goal, Martial can definitely play. But yeah, that would be my team. For tomorrow's game. Again, look, it's going to be a tough one. I think I said this in your podcast last night, Pete. I think it's a massive. Tomorrow's game is massive for both sides. If you look at the respect that it'll show where both of us are. I think, if you look at Newcastle, if they beat United tomorrow, I think they in my opinion, I think it shows that they're serious this season and they probably potentially will challenge for Europe. Now that's not Champions League, maybe. But maybe though Europa, he'll be in amongst us and Liverpool for the Europa League places. I think Newcastle will have that chance this season to challenge for the Europa League, maybe Europa Conference League as well. So Newcastle will challenge for that. Maybe regardless of what happens tomorrow, I think they will be thereabouts. But if they win tomorrow, I think that's a massive statement for challenging for Europe. It could really send shockwaves of confidence throughout your whole squad. I think equally for us. Look, we've beaten Everton, who had one of the best defensive records in the league this season, last weekend. We've beaten Arsenal, we've beaten Liverpool. I think if we beat Newcastle at home tomorrow, a team who's in form as well, that would be a good statement and a good kind of springboard for us. Because if you look at our next 2 games after this, we've Tottenham at home and then we've Chelsea away after this game. So, Newcastle are a very good team. So for me, if we beat E tomorrow, then look, it sends a bit of confidence through the squad. But even if we draw, look, it wouldn't be a disaster tomorrow. I'm looking at the next 3 games, and I'm looking at getting 7 points in 9 games. That's what I'm looking for. Now, look, whether we achieve that or not, that's another thing. But ideally, that's what we need to really, if we want to be in the top 4 race, so we want to be sustained there, I think that's what we need. So in that respect, we need to start off tomorrow with a win and with a bit of positivity there. But we will get our score predictions here just before we wrap up there. So, Pete, as you are the guest of the show, I'm going to bring the score predictions to you first. And what's the score going to be for tomorrow's game?
I'm going to stick with my prediction that I gave last night. I think it's going to be an entertaining game. It's going to be there's going to be goals in it. I'm shocked. I'm still shocked it's not on TV. I really am. But
yeah, I was saying that at the start.
Yeah.
It's shocking. The fact they've Steven Gerrard's Aston Villa, who are fucking horrible to watch on at 2:00 tomorrow, is absolutely disgusting.
I mean, it doesn't affect me because I'll be in the away end with the Newcastle fans, but I'm gonna go a 3-2 Newcastle win. I think there'll be goals in it. I think it'll be an entertaining game. But yeah, I'm gonna hope that for the second time in 60 years that we managed to get a win. I'm being hopeful here.
I remember the game he bet us at Old Trafford on David Moyes, Johan Kabay. Oh fucking hell! I remember that. That was that season. It just was everyone beating us at home. Every record was getting fucking broken. Newcastle turned up. Fucking Johan Kabay scored. It was just it's fucking sick. Hopefully that doesn't happen tomorrow. I'm actually going to go 2-1 United. I do think it's going to be a tough game. I think Newcastle will be resolute at the back. I think in midfield there'll be a good battle in there between Casemiro and Guimaraes. I think that's going to be a good, I suppose, one-on-one battle tomorrow. And I think just our pace up front will probably win us the game. I think the likes of Martial, if he comes on or if he starts, and Rashford actually are going to be key to us winning the game. Depends if Newcastle if they mark Bruno out of the game, then maybe that might give us Eriksen a chance to get a bit more freedom in midfield and create as well. So, look, it'll be interesting to see how tomorrow's game goes. And, look, again, it's 2 big clubs playing against each other, 2 traditionally big clubs playing each other with 2 very good fan bases. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, back in the 90s, you had Newcastle and United playing against each other. And, the football, the games were so entertaining. There was loads of goals. There was... Now, look, we did have the Kevin Keegan rant back in the day at Fergie, and there was genuine rivalry there. Look, if both clubs can get back to that, that'd be great. We could have a lot of interesting chats across both of our platforms on games to come, hopefully in years to come. And look, hopefully, Liverpool and City can drop down out of the winning trophies and stuff like that. But Pete, we will wrap it up there. And thanks very much for coming on. It's been a very good chat. Look, best of luck for tomorrow, but not too much luck. And look, we'll definitely get you on for the reverse fixture in the new year. But thanks very much, everyone, for tuning in as well, and who will watch on the replay as well. Make sure to smash that like button and subscribe. But until then, guys, we are out of here, and let's hope United get the 3 points tomorrow. Until then, guys, see you later.